18 8,000ers, 7 ascents of Everest, 1 rescue seen by the entire world, and not a single headline with his name. In the spring of 2023, a video went viral across the globe, a Sherpa carrying a dying climber on his back through the death zone on Everest. Millions of views, dozens of news reports, but someone else got the glory. And the man in the video? He just quietly went back to work. On April 7th, 2025, this same man leaves Camp 2 on Annapurna with a load of oxygen bottles on his back. 10 minutes after a chance encounter on the trail, a massive avalanche sweeps him into a crevasse. His body will be located by a radar signal, but never recovered. This is the story of Ngima Tashi Sherpa, a hero who wasn't saved. In the upper Khumbu Valley, at an altitude of 3,500 meters, lies the village of Tame. A few dozen stone houses, a monastery on a hillside, and a trail leading to the Nangpa La Pass, an ancient trade route to Tibet. It's a place that's hard to find on a map, but impossible to erase from the history of mountaineering. This is the birthplace of Tenzing Norgay, the man who, in 1953, stood on the summit of Everest for the first time with Edmund Hillary. It's also home to Apa Sherpa, who for years held the world record for the most ascents of the planet's highest peak. Sometime around 1992 or 1993, Ngima Tashi Sherpa was born here. His family is part of a local climbing dynasty. His uncle is Rima Rinje Sherpa, the man who has climbed Everest more than 30 times, the current world record holder. His older brother, Phura Charing, has 8 Everest summits and 2 on K2. In this family, working at high altitude isn't a choice to be discussed. It's a craft, passed down from father to son, from uncle to nephew, from older brother to younger. Almost nothing is known about Ngima Tashi's childhood. Not a single interview, not one profile, has preserved any details about his school years, his hobbies, or his dreams. This is typical. The biographies of Sherpas don't begin at birth, but with their first expedition. Everything that came before the mountains remains in the shadows, just like the village of Tem itself, hidden from the valley's main tourist trails. But it's this environment that forges a person for whom an altitude of 8,000 meters will become a workplace. In Tom, you don't have to explain why you go up. You have to explain why you chose to stay down. Ngima Tashi did not stay down. Around 2015 or 2016, he began working on commercial expeditions, first as a porter, then as a high-altitude guide. He was hired by 7 Summit Treks, Nepal's largest expedition operator, a company that sends hundreds of clients and dozens of Sherpas to the 8,000ers every year. For a young man from Tom, this is the standard entry into the profession. His first Everest came in 2016, but not from the usual south side in Nepal, but from the north, in Tibet. This is unusual. The vast majority of Nepali Sherpas work only on the southern route, through the Khumbu Icefall, the western CWM, and the South Col. The north side is a completely different mountain, a different glacier, different camps, a different climbing rhythm, a different country with its own bureaucracy and border controls. Most Sherpas will never cross that border in their entire careers. Ngima Tashi crossed it at the age of 23, and from that moment on, he knew Everest from both sides. He knew both routes, both glaciers, both ridges. By the time he was 24, he understood this mountain in a way many guides never will, even after a lifetime on its slopes. What followed was a rhythm that didn't change for 4 straight years. 2017, Everest. 2018, Everest. 2019, Everest. Each time, it was the same job. Fix the ropes, carry the loads, get the client to the summit, and bring them back down. Each time, the death zone, the queue on the summit ridge, the oxygen bottles, someone else's dream on his shoulders. He didn't run a blog, he didn't give interviews, he didn't post selfies from the summit. His name never appeared in a single headline. In expedition reports, he was just a line item on the staff list. 4 Everest summits in 4 years is not a feat in the world of the Khumbu. It's the norm. It's proof that you're reliable, that a stranger can bet their life on you. And it was this reputation that would open the door for him to go where few others do, beyond just one mountain. In 2021, everything changed. In a single season, Ngima Tashi summited Everest, Lhotse, and Manaslu, 3 8,000ers, 3 different routes, 3 back-to-back expeditions. This was a statement. He was playing in a different league now. In 2022, he raised the bar even higher. Everest and Lhotse in the spring, then a flight to Pakistan for K2 and Broad Peak in the summer. 4 8,000ers in a single calendar year. 2 mountain ranges, 2 countries, 2 completely different worlds of high-altitude mountaineering. On Broad Peak, he accomplished something that looks more like a statistical anomaly than reality. 3 ascents in 13 days, each time with a new client. Climb up, climb down, climb up again, climb down, climb up a third time. His body performed at high altitude the way most people's function at sea level. By the end of 2022, he had 11 8,000er summits to his name. He was about 30 years old. 7 summit treks called his rope-fixing skills legendary. An affiliated company, 14 Peaks Expedition, listed him among the best Sherpas of his generation. But outside of the professional circle, the expedition operators, the base camps, the climbing forums, he was still a complete unknown. In the winter of 2022 to 2023, he took part in an attempt to climb Cho Oyu from the south side. It was a strong team. Ngima Tashi Sherpa, the Norwegian Kristen Harila, and the Brit Adriana Brownlee were all working alongside him. The wind destroyed their gear at the very first camp. The attempt failed, but it was here, on the wind-blasted slopes of Cho Oyu, that Ngima Tashi worked on the same rope team as Ngima Tashi for the first time. A few months later, this connection would prove decisive, at an altitude where a single right decision is worth a human life. A few months later, on May 18, 2023, a situation unfolded on Everest that would change Ngima Tashi's public story, though he didn't know it yet. At an altitude of about 8,300 meters near a rock step climbers call the balcony, a man was lying in the snow. His name was Ravichandran Tharumalingam. He was 58 years old, and he was from Malaysia. He was out of oxygen. He was barely moving, severe frostbite, high-altitude pulmonary edema, and he was delirious. According to eyewitnesses, he had been at this altitude for over 30 hours, a time frame after which the chances of survival in the death zone approached 0. Dozens of climbers passed him, a long line of people clipped into the fixed ropes, moving steadily upward. Every one of them had paid between $30,000 and $100,000 for a chance to stand on the highest point on Earth. Every one of them saw the man lying there. No one stopped. This isn't cruelty in the usual sense. It's the arithmetic of high altitude. At 8,000 meters, stopping means risking your own life, and bringing another person's body down is a task most consider impossible. Ngima Tashi Sherpa, a 30-year-old guide, was leading a Chinese client to the summit at that moment. He saw Ravichandran and made a decision that went against all the commercial logic of the expedition. He convinced his client to turn back from the summit. The client agreed, even though it meant losing his investment and, possibly, his only shot at Everest. Ngima Tashi wrapped the Malaysian man in a sleeping mat and began the descent alone. For 6 hours, he dragged the semi-conscious man down the icy slope, through the fixed ropes, past the same climbers who were still heading for the top, from the balcony down to the South Col at 7,900 meters. By the time Ngima Tashi reached the South Col, he was at his limit. Ravichandran was alive, but unable to move on his own. Safety was still hundreds of meters below, and it was right here that Ngima Tashi Sherpa appeared. He didn't hesitate. At the South Col, Ngima Tashi took hold of Ravichandran, and the two Sherpas began to work as a team. They took turns hoisting the Malaysian onto their backs, over 70 kilograms of dead weight in a down suit, and carried him down the ice. Where it was impossible to carry, they dragged him through the snow. A 700-meter vertical descent to Camp 3, at an altitude of roughly 7,200 meters. Every step was on the verge of their own exhaustion, in the thin air where the oxygen level is just a third of what it is at sea level. From Camp 3, Ravichandran was evacuated by a helicopter on a long line. He was flown to a hospital in Kathmandu. He made a full recovery. Video of the rescue was picked up by the Reuters news agency, and within days, it spread around the world. CNN, the BBC, Al Jazeera, the South China Morning Post, ABC News, Deutsche Welle, dozens of the world's largest media outlets published the footage, a Sherpa carrying a limp body on his back across the blindingly white slopes of the death zone. The story was perfect for headlines. An ordinary man saves a life where everyone else had walked on by. All the glory went to Rinje Sherpa. It was his name in every report, his face on CNN, his story as the hero. But a few weeks later, the founder of 14 Peaks Expedition, Tashi Sherpa, released a statement that changed the picture. The man in the most viral shot, the one of the Sherpa carrying the climber on his back, was not Rinje. It was Ngima Tashi. Rinje was the one filming. The image that had circled the globe showed Ngima Tashi, but the world didn't know it. In June of 2023, the controversy took a new turn. Ravichandran was accused of being ungrateful. He had allegedly failed to thank his rescuers and had blocked Rinje on Instagram. The topic got over 1 million views on Twitter. Dozens of articles discussed two characters, Rinje the hero and the ungrateful climber. Ngima Tashi's name was mentioned almost nowhere. The media narrative required a simple formula. One rescuer, one rescued, and a second Sherpa just didn't fit the story. Ngima Tashi didn't enter the debate, didn't challenge someone else's fame, didn't demand recognition. He posted a single sentence on Facebook, "Saving lives is what matters." And then he went back to work, to the next season, the next mountain, the next client on the next 8,000er. The next mountain would be Annapurna. In the spring of 2024, Ngima Tashi summits what many call the most dangerous 8,000er on the planet. And that's just the first part of his season. Next up, Everest for the 7th time. Then, Lhotse. 3 8,000ers in a single spring, with no breaks, no trips home between expeditions. In the fall, he switches to Manaslu, joining the rope-fixing team and standing on the summit again in September. By the end of 2024, he has 18 successful 8,000er summits to his name, across 6 different mountains. He is 32 years old, but amidst this conveyor belt of commercial expeditions, something personal happens. On November 27, 2024, Ngima Tashi, along with his brother Furat Sharing, climbs Yasa Thak, a 6,000er, standing at 6,141 meters, just a few hours' walk from their home village. Their route follows the East Ridge. This is their own project, 2 brothers from Tem on an unclimbed peak right next to home. Although, even this moment comes with a footnote. Publications would later surface questioning its first ascent status. The peak may have been climbed before under a different name, but for the Sherpa brothers, it doesn't matter. The mountain stands over the place where they grew up, and now it bears their footprints. By this point, his resume reads like a condensed encyclopedia of altitude. Everest 7 times, Lhotse 3, K2 once, Manaslu 3, Annapurna once, Broad Peak 4. 18 8,000ers across 6 different peaks. But when friends asked what he was most proud of, his answer was always the same: the rescue on Everest in 2023. Of all the numbers he could have put front and center, he chose someone else's life. In the spring of 2025, he plans to return to Annapurna, a mountain he'd already climbed a year ago. A normal job, a normal season. Except, this normal season starts in a very unusual way. By the spring of 2025, more expeditions are gathering for Annapurna 1 than ever before. The Nepali government issues 66 climbing permits, a record number for a mountain that has claimed 75 lives throughout its history. The fatality rate on Annapurna approaches 30%, the highest among all 14 8,000ers. Over half the dead, 52%, were victims of avalanches. 6 expedition teams are working simultaneously on the north face, forging parallel routes through ice falls, seracs, and crevasses. Ngima Tashi arrives at Annapurna as part of the 7 Summit Treks team. The expedition leader is Chang Dawa Sherpa, one of the most famous high-altitude organizers in Nepal. Working alongside Ngima Tashi is his partner, Rima Rinje Sherpa, a 27-year-old guide with 7 8,000er summits, 4 of them on Everest. To acclimatize, they both climb Chulu West, a technically straightforward 6,000er that helps prepare the body for the altitude before the main push. But the mountain they've come to looks different than it did a year ago. The winter of 2024 to 2025 was anomalously dry. There's almost no snow. The north face of Annapurna is covered in blue ice, hard, slick, and unforgiving. Crevasses that are usually hidden under snow bridges now yawn wide open, deep, broad, and stretching across the entire route. The seracs, towers of ice looming over the trail, have lost their snowy binding and have become more unstable. Rockfalls and avalanches are more frequent and more powerful than usual. Ngima Tashi, one of Nepal's most respected expedition leaders, working on Annapurna that same season, describes the situation bluntly. These are the most difficult conditions he has ever seen on this mountain in his entire career. Brazilian mountaineer Moises Fiamontini compares the environment to a winter ascent. Only worse, because the warmth makes the seracs even more unpredictable. The teams are running out of rope. The number of crevasses on the route exceeds everything the logisticians had prepared for. On the 7th of April, Ngima Tashi and Rima Rinje set out from Camp 2, carrying a load of oxygen bottles. Their job is to haul the oxygen up to Camp 3, preparing the route for clients ahead of the summit push. It's routine work, the kind of job high-altitude Sherpas do on every commercial expedition, the job they are here to do. They are climbing the slope above Camp 2 at an altitude of about 5,600 meters, oxygen bottles on their backs, crampons on their feet, with several hours of climbing ahead to reach Camp 3. A third Sherpa, Pemba Thenduk, is with them. The route passes under seracs, through a zone that all the teams this season are trying to get through as quickly as possible. Every minute spent here is a minute under overhanging ice that could collapse without warning. A little lower down the slope, coming toward them, is the South African climber John Black. He's heading back down after deciding to abandon his summit attempt. The conditions are just too dangerous. They meet on the trail, exchange a few words, and Black offers Ngima Tashi and Rima Rinje some chocolate. A simple gesture, the kind that happens dozens of times a day on the mountain. Black continues his descent. 10 minutes pass. Around noon, an avalanche hits. Not a rockfall, not a piece of a serac, but a full-blown flow of snow and ice, thundering down the slope from above. Pemba Thenduk would later describe it to the Nepali Times like this: "It was huge, taller than a house in Kathmandu when it hit us. Pemba and his client happened to be right under a serac that takes the main impact, and they survive. When the dust settles, Pemba realizes his two colleagues are gone from the slope, swept off the route. He immediately starts searching, shouting, scanning the debris, trying to find any trace. The avalanche threw Ngima Tashi and Rima Rinje into a deep crevasse, one of those that gaped open all over the route this season, freed from their snow bridges by the abnormally dry winter. Normally, these crevasses are an obstacle on the path. Now, one of them has become a grave." John Black, who was talking to both Sherpas just 10 minutes earlier, captures the impact wave of the avalanche on his camera. He doesn't yet know that the men who just shared his chocolate are now buried under the snow. The man who, 2 years earlier, had dragged another's body down through Everest's death zone was now buried himself under tons of snow and ice. There was one difference. On Everest, his partner was there to help. On Annapurna, there was no one to catch him. On Annapurna, there are 5 Sherpas ready to search: Nawang Thinduk, Nima Wangdak, Lakpa Temba, Ming Temba, and Pemba Thenduk, the same man who miraculously survived, begin combing the avalanche zone immediately after the impact. They work by hand, at 5,500 meters, in conditions where a new avalanche could strike the very same slope at any moment. They know this, and they keep searching. By evening, aircraft join the effort. Pilot Captain Sobit Gauchan gets his helicopter airborne and flies over the zone until dark. From above, all that's visible is a chaotic jumble of snow and ice, mixed with serac debris, no sign of people on the surface. The next day, 2 helicopters continue the flyovers, methodically scanning every section of the avalanche runout. Ground teams head back out onto the slope. The result is the same: nothing. The breakthrough comes around the 10th of April. The search team uses RECO technology, a system designed to find people buried in avalanches. The principle is simple. Passive reflectors are sewn into the Sherpa's clothing, small plates that need no batteries and emit no signal on their own. But when a directional radar signal hits the reflector, it sends back a pulse at double the frequency. The detector picks up this response and shows the direction. Chong Dawa Sherpa, the expedition leader, is on the slope himself, operating the equipment. He points the detector into the depths of the crevasse and gets a steady signal, then a second one. Both reflectors are responding from the same spot, deep inside the fissure. Chang Dawa records the detector's audio response on video and posts the clip. There's no doubt Ngima Tashi and Rima Rinje are at the bottom of the crevasse under a massive amount of snow and ice. But to find is not to recover. The crevasse plunges dozens of meters down. Its walls are unstable ice, ready to collapse from any vibration. The slope above is still loaded with seracs that could fall again. Sending a rescue team into the crevasse would mean a high probability of losing more people. On April 11, 2025, 7 Summit Treks makes the decision to call off the operation. The company's official statement articulates what everyone has understood for days. It's impossible to survive that long under such a mass of snow and ice, and continuing the search would endanger the lives of the rescuers. Ngima Tashi and Rima Rinje remain on Annapurna. Their bodies lie in a crevasse at about 5,600 meters, lower than any of the 18 summits Ngima Tashi had climbed in his career. 20 of the 75 people who have died on Annapurna throughout its history are Sherpas. People who don't choose the route, don't set the summit date, don't decide whether to go or not. People who go out on the slope because it's their job. A job that pays 2 million Nepali rupees in case of death. Roughly 15,000 US dollars. That's what a high-altitude Sherpa's family will receive if he doesn't come back from the mountain. That amount has quadrupled in recent years, and still, it's hard to call it commensurate. $15,000 is the price of a single spot on a budget commercial expedition to Everest. A client pays that much for a chance to summit. A Sherpa's family gets that much because he will never summit again. After the deaths of Ngima Tashi and Rima Rinje, Ngima Ji makes a statement that ripples through the climbing community. He will never return to Annapurna. A man who built his career on the most difficult high-altitude routes, a man for whom risk is part of the job, says it plainly, this mountain is too dangerous and the price is too high. His words aren't an emotional gesture, but a professional assessment. When one of the world's best guides gives up on a mountain, it says more than any statistic ever could. No public fund to help Ngima Tashi's family could be found in any publicly available source. His wife, back home in Tom, is nowhere to be found, not in any interview, not in any article. Like the families of most fallen Sherpas, she stays out of the spotlight, living in the same silence that defined her husband's entire professional life. Meanwhile, that viral image from 2023 lives on. People keep sharing it, embedding it in videos, using it to illustrate stories of heroism. Beneath it, the name Rinje Sherpa. But according to those who knew them both, the man in the photo is actually Ngima Tashi. The world came to know his face, but never his name. The only words he ever shared publicly were posted on social media, right after he'd saved a life at 8,400 meters. They read, "Saving lives is what matters." But on Annapurna, at 5,600 meters, weighed down by oxygen tanks for someone else's summit attempt, there was no one there to save him.